Saliva-slicked fingers erased the red smear, unnoticed until now, from Yongju's thigh. In the sink, his bloodied pants turned the water a murky red. A few good soaks would salvage his outfit, but his injuries would take at least a month to heal. Not ideal for someone reliant on his face and body to keep food on the table. He drained and refilled the basin a second time and hobbled out of the ensuite. Perched on the edge of the bed sat Song, a small box of medical supplies in his lap. He'd already laid what he needed, large bandages, and a worn bottle of Centella Asiatica ointment. Yongju recognized the brand as a permanent fixture of his grandfather's medicine cabinet. He winced in anticipation of the sting he'd feel when applied to the nasty gashes along his shin and forearm. The pristine sheets wrinkled as he sat beside Song, glad he made his bed this morning. Were he at home they'd still be a tangled mess. He locked onto Song's brown eyes, unsure how to break the silence, as Song offered an open hand. His eyes flicking between Yongju's wound and face, as if any longer would cause him to lose his breakfast. Then and there. Without protest Yongju placed his arm into Song's palm. The man took right to applying the ointment. He glanced down only long enough to locate the wound before his gaze pulled away again as if by a magnetic force. Nimble fingers worked as he alternated between looking at the forest and Yongju's eyes. The redhead man's breath caught in his throat. When Song finished with Yongju's arm he slid from the bed to squat in front of it. This time, he didn't ask for permission, tending next to the deeper cut on Yongju's shin. It stung a lot more but only the pain was brief, giving way to a soothing sensation as the medication set in. The pain flared with each butterfly closure, but Song worked fast for minimal discomfort. Yongju marveled the man's precision with the bandaging. It felt practiced, like he'd done this countless times before. Muscle memory. A grim thought struck him that he'd honed these skills caring for his elderly grandfather. "I used to do this all the time," said Song. For a moment Yongju worried he might have given voice to his thoughts. Song tucked the edge of the bandage inside the wrapping, careful not to irritate his skin. Gripping Yongju by both ankles, he lifted them with care ensuring not to displace the towel. He guided the younger man to twist his body sideways, settling his feet where Song once sat. Yongju eyed the bandage, a line of pink already blooming from the center of his shin. "I'm sorry," Song said, eyes sincere, as if it had been a wound caused by his own hand. "It's not like you pushed me." Yongju made a face, reaching for the first aid box to hand off to Song. "My clumsy ass should have been more careful." Their fingers brushed and Yongju smiled through the pain. Sunlight warmed Yongju's feet through the window as he thought of the forgotten tools in the cave. Though remote, the location brought occasional hikers. If not stolen, Song supplies were certain not to fare well in another downpour. "Did you finish the painting at least?" Song responded with a shake of his head, amping Yongju's guilt. "Would you like to?" It took no more than 15 minutes for Song to return from the cave. Yongju had been counting. He would have felt worse if it had taken longer. Today he couldn't blame the rain. They'd lost half the day all due to his recklessness. Instead of a pained walk to the sitting room, Song insisted Yongju get comfortable on the bed. Yongju tried to replicate the pose from before his tumble. Though the setting was different, he wore the same still damp outfit. He prayed the moisture wouldn't seep through the towel and soak the bed sheets he'd need sleep on later. As Song's face peered out from behind the easel as he worked, Yongju sat still. Listening to the paintbrush rhythm against the canvas, the mixing of custom colors. Tension from earlier thickened the silence, Song too focused to notice Yongju blushing. On occasion Song's eyebrows knitted together, as if he'd made a mistake. He would scrape the paint with his palette knife, or texture the area with bold smears. Whatever he created, no doubt would turn out uniquely beautiful. The stinging in his limbs persisted but had dulled. Perhaps because he hadn't moved for some time now. Grateful, Yongju thought back Song's rattled visage. How he pushed aside his obvious discomfort to look after him. He couldn't recall if he'd ever known Song to have a fear of blood, but he hadn't handled the sight of it well. When Song leaned back to examine the canvas, paint streaked his jaw and dotted his chest. He had an expression that read, "It's not my best, but it will do." Yongju watched as reached down to drop his brushes into a dingy cup of water beneath his protesting stool. Rubbing a thumb across his bottom lip, Yongju smiled as it left slate-purple paint in its wake. Song looked over to the clock, and let out a deep sigh. Yongju followed suit, not even realizing he'd been copying the other man's movements. Several hours had passed in the blink of an eye, and the sky outside the sliding door already darkening. To make up for the lost time, Yongju would have been willing to sit here all night long if needed. "Are you okay?" Song swirled the dirty brushes in the cup and then wiping the bristles onto a stained cloth. "I'm a little stiff." Song eyed Yongju's bandage. "I meant your leg." "Oh." As if on cue, a twinge of pain shot up his shin, the first reminder in a while of the contusion. He blocked the pain from reaching his face and nodded. "I'm fine." Despite being here a day, talking to Song hadn't gotten easier. In fact, it felt even more awkward than when they'd started. His stomach still flipped every time the artist glanced his direction. If Emmy were here to witness their interactions, she'd poke fun at every stutter, every flush. Yongju's once-in-a-lifetime chance to work with his idol had him behaving like a lovesick fool. Yongju watched Song gather the last of his tools and exit the room as silently as he had entered. He eyed the back of the easel, blocking the view out the sliding glass door, beyond the foot of the bed. Yongju didn't dare get up to look until he was certain Song was not coming back. 5 minutes passed. 10. 15. Instead of returning footsteps, pans clattered in the kitchen below. Song was preparing dinner. Careful not to pull at the fresh wound, Yongju lowered his legs to the floor. He hobbled over to the easel and paused behind it, steeling himself for what he might find on the other side. Looking back once more, Yongju almost expected Song to reprimand him for snooping. Like a parent to a child caught spoiling his dinner, hand deep in the cookie jar. The doorway remained empty, clinking noises persisting below. On the other side of the canvas, Yongju gasped. Paint glistened in spots where still wet. In areas depicting rocks were thicker globs of paint for dimension. Reflections lined with silver metallic paint highlighted each ripple in the water. In the center sat a man he recognized as himself, but different. Not the version he saw every day in the mirror. Something softer. More ethereal. If he hadn't sat for the painting himself, he might have mistaken it for a photograph. Is this really how Song perceived him?
Well, dear brother, it seems you've made a lasting impression.
Emmy's laughter rang out through the cell phone on the bed. Yongju couldn't help but to join her, his cheeks hot with embarrassment. 2 falls in as many days with inevitable lasting scars to stand as a reminder. I'm only here for a week, and I've managed to humiliate myself, twice.
You're okay though?
Emmy asked, genuine concern beneath her mirth. Yongju ran his fingers over the wrappings on his arm as he stood by rear door. The cool night drifted through the mesh mosquito screen to kiss his skin. He downplayed his injuries to reassure his sister and put her mind at ease. They're just scratches, he said. Song took good care of me.
I'm sure he did.
Emmy teased. Yongju failed to keep a smile from his lips and shifted weight off his bad leg. This place is beautiful, he changed the topic. Pictures don't do it justice. He'd snapped a few forbidden photos through the glass door and sent them to Emmy the night before. She'd never leak them, but the fact that he took them in the first place felt criminal. If the public ever learned of Song's location, Yongju would be the only one to blame.
I wish I were there to see it in person.
Emmy cleared her throat.
And that beautiful man of yours.
He's not my man, said Yongju.
But you wish he was.
She retorted. Emmy could read him like a book. Yongju's long-withstanding crush hadn't been a secret for years, so why bother with denial? They both knew damn well it would be a total lie. If he'd outgrown his crush, he wouldn't still speak so kindly of the man. There wouldn't be obvious longing behind every reverent word. He wouldn't be here now. The younger man's voice carried clear through the still-open doorway. From the hallway, Song could hear Yongju's voice heightened by excitement. Comfort took place of his earlier unease as he talked and giggled with his sister. Song considered bringing Yongju a food tray again to leave outside the door. He decided that would be too impersonal, and this was the least he could do. He'd gotten injured today because of him after all. Indirect or not, he felt the weight of responsibility. Upon reaching the door, Yongju's honeyed laugh tickled his ears and Song's steps slowed. When he heard the conversation had diverted to himself, he stopped in his tracks. He's not my man. For some odd reason, hearing this confirmation aloud made Song's heart sink. True, they weren't anything to one another but boss and employee. But it didn't feel nice to hear all the same.
But you wish he was.
He knew he shouldn't listen in, yet he couldn't tear himself away. His expression shifted from disappointment to intrigue at her statement. Song waited in the suffocating silence for Yongju's response. But I wish he was. The man's words, softer but serious, brought more genuine joy than Song had felt in years. He closed his eyes to compose himself. Tamping the gratification from his face, Song stepped forward. A couple raps of his knuckles against the door frame drew Yongju's attention. A notable jolt straightened Yongju's lazy lean against the headboard. In black silk pajamas, messy braided hair over one shoulder, his chest heaved as if he'd ran a marathon. Flustered, Yongju ended the call. You must be hungry. Of course he was, his last meal had been breakfast. Join me?
Thank you for watching. Please like, comment, and subscribe for more.